for lodging, say, January 2nd, so after the invitation date, potentially, prepaid in full, then the state's guidance is that they wouldn't have to pay the additional tax?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
How? Can I clear up something? We have to be careful, prepaid in full is not necessarily, it's very different from a deposit. So lots of people put down a deposit for the full amount, but the payment doesn't occur until the stay or whenever it's a non-refundable deposit according to their.
And I will say, you can do whatever you want, but I think we need to clear up what's going to be required in Keystone as to when a sale occurs, when the tax is due, particularly related to the January 1st date. I mean, it may be a non-issue after January 1. There may be sometimes. I mean, there will be some circumstances where it would be an issue if somebody paid a deposit, a non-refundable deposit, and didn't stay. Then, if you had a rule where you didn't collect lodging taxes on the deposit, then you wouldn't get lodging taxes for those non-refundable deposits where somebody did not actually end up staying and paying the full amount. But that is a question for you all to decide, and I do suggest that because it seems like it's going to be an issue in the town and people have already been asking questions, that we should clarify it. But that's how the state handles it.
Councilmember Davis.
Given that people make their reservations many months ahead, and there probably are many reservations on the books, I think we really, and I think starting January 1st, this is my opinion, they need to start paying the 2% lodging tax because our voters voted for that. So, and I don't know. And I guess my other question would be, since we seem to be only town in this county that doesn't charge lodging tax, what have other people done? What do other people do?
Well, the question that you're kind of wrestling with, I think, is turning on the tax. So that only happens a limited number of times. And it could only be one time for the surrounding municipalities once they've increased the taxes.
Which they have.
Right, and I don't know what other municipalities have done. I mean, it really is your decision as to what you want to do. And it could go different ways. I mean, it can go that you want to charge the 2% tax on stays that happen on January 1 and after, irregardless of when payment is made. Or you want to treat it similar to the state's process. And the state's process is really when somebody pays the full purchase price for their accommodation. That's when the sale occurs. So say, for example, you buy something on Amazon, you pay sales tax when you buy it on Amazon, even though you don't get it 10 days later.
A couple of thoughts. One, what we do now based on our precedent for if we have a raise or lower in the future, so we should think about that. Two, there's what each of us probably thinks is the most sensible and fair, and then also, but we also have to balance that over like the compliance with what our voters have voted on and what we think that actually means. But I have a technical question. If anyone has the knowledge of how the various platforms out there, because the vast majority of these lodging packages come from the hotels and from various online lodging platforms, Vrbo, Airbnb, and there's various others. How do those platforms charge the additional tax in any of those scenarios, whether someone did pay in full or whether they are being billed the balance of their payment at a closer in time is probably most are. Anyone know that?
I can share in on a little bit of that.
Okay, Councilmember.
So I can share on a little bit of that. There's two primary ways that I've seen reservations come in. It's either fully prepaid or it's hotel collect. And so if it's, for example, like through Expedia, and you do a prepaid, you're prepaying Expedia for the full amount, and the hotel is collecting their portion from Expedia versus a hotel collect is, let's say I book a reservation and I put down the credit card's guarantee method at the hotel, I then pay. So I don't know Airbnb, Airbnb, but at least through third parties that a lot of folks will use to look at their accommodations. That's how the two processes.
So it seems to me that there's one of two dates, the date that the tax. Did I hear that it really isn't official yet? Is that correct?
It will, they have to go to the campus, just like we did on the election commission. So it's not effective till after the canvas is complete and the clerk makes their determination, and that's scheduled for.
The 25th of November.
So the 25th of November is a specific date, January 1 is a specific.
No. January 1 is really the only date.
Well, I'm thinking about from a, if you're going to say, what is the definition of purchase? And somebody purchased it in full prior to November 25th, then I could argue that they are not obligated. If it's after November 25th, I would say that they are obligated. Is that, so I'm asking really, does that second date play into the definition of purchase?
The November date? I don't think so. No. That's just, I mean, that's just a date that the clerk has to wait for really those, the UACAVA ballots.
I agree with it.
Yeah, so it, and in this election, it wasn't close. It's not gonna make any difference.
Well, what I'm really saying is that if somebody made a purchase in September and they paid it full, but they're not renting it for February, I could argue that they bought this product and are not obligated to that 2%. Whereas this election did occur and it is official now, and if they pay in full in December 1st, they should probably be, before again, January, the rental be obligated for the 2%. So I'm just trying to think about how we're fair to the consumer when they became knowledgeable of this 2%.
And how would you administer that?
Thing-wise, that's why I bring up the.
But your person, your town, employee who's collecting that, then they have to go through all of the,
When was the purchase?
yeah.
Right.
That's why that's the technical question, like how would these platforms affect that tax? Because we can come up with what feels right, but if there's no practical way to do it, then we're balancing it against what, literal interpretation of the voters voted for the tax. And we're basically saying, well, we don't want a surprise billing, right? That doesn't feel good. But there's got to be some kind of practical to do that.
Councilmember Fisk.
Could it be incumbent on the people who are collecting the reservations to send out a notice that the tax rate is changed as of January 1st, and if they want to maintain their reservation, they can, but you notice that they're going to be paying a 2% lodging tax as of January 1st, 2025.
So that would be anybody who stays on January 1, 2025, and after then would need to pay the tax. And you can do that way, that's definitely, even if they paid it full, you could do that.
I think we're saying that we don't, as a town, have any right to like give them an option, to cancel if they don't have the right time. That's not our.
Councilmember Sullivan, this was how to do that. So somebody paid September, in January. They paid on, I mean, somebody's gonna have the obligation to call it, and say, you owe 2%. You're really dealing for those early pays, two different things. One is if it was a deposit, then the tax would be collected on January 2nd. If it was paid in full, then it wouldn't be subject under that, one of the scenarios, that wouldn't be, they wouldn't have to pay the tax.
Right, I mean, you can decide to have only those people who pay in full starting January 1, those are the people who pay the tax, or anybody who stays effective January 1, then they have to do, an extra $50, I don't know, to pay for their tax, even if they paid in full in advance in October. So those would be options.
If I may,
Mr. Cummings,
I'm not sure about Airbnb. I use Vrbo for my rental property. The option is a tax takes place on all properties in the jurisdiction at this state or doesn't. To set the taxes in Vrbo, actually, they automatically set taxes. And for instance, I have a new tax coming up on my Winter Park property that will take effect, and if anyone has already put a complete deposit down on the property, they'll receive an additional bill with the additional tax. They don't have the ability to base the tax on booking date, selling on the date of the stays.
Councilmember Permit?
I think that's super useful information, and I just want to add, well, I certainly feel, the sensation that if you've already paid everything, you don't want to get a surprise 2% bill. Although that is only 2%, it's still the concept, but at the same time, you don't want to create a perverse incentive where you don't work to also get out of the pay it full ahead of time, and then you don't have to pay that tax. That's how our voters have to do.
Any other comments? Councilmember Kerr?
So just to kind of tie this together, this is a one-time policy, which will last from whenever the earliest booking was made this year till sometime in 2025, which would be through the summer. You talked about a couple options. One is 2% on the day off, regardless of how much you pay for it. Another option was to split it. What if it's simply on the collection tape? And yeah, a few people might have had. I am not usually a proponent of let's do it just because it's easy, but it's clean to require the tax when the money is. Have you ever purchased anything that's using Amazon and they come back and say, oh, we raised the price? Yeah. You cancel it, say, or just mumble to yourself. it's kind of a question of, yes, the taxpayers voted to do this. Did they vote to put, what are we calling the marketplace people in this awkward position? And is there that much money at stake that we would go back and collect money, unlike tax on money?
Certainly, probably a lot of bookings that already happened this season.
Probably. But probably not in full. Those people will not take that fine, so they know for sure they're going to make it out here.
I'm just trying to avoid that perverse incentive, because you could have one of those booking agencies that go ahead, email everyone and say, hey, you were gonna pay when you got here, but pay now, pay it back. I'm just saying, don't create a perverse incentive potentially.
Any thoughts on guidance to staff? Councilmember Davis?
Am I correct that the ballot issue said effective January 1st?
That, yes.
I have a niece who is coming on the 27th of December and staying through the 3rd of January. My expectation for her is she will not pay the tax through the 31st, she will pay the tax for the next 3 days.
Sure.
And back up a different question, how are we going to pay this to all the property managers and the SDRs, are we just going to go out to the SDR license? Will that get all? And you can tell it might be less.
Comment?
We'll reach out to the SDR licenses and to all our hotels in town and to the large vertical Airbnbs. Those are these issues.
Councilmember Davis, so
I was trying to be conscientious to those people that pay. I hate the places. I want to go on. But I can, once about that, this is that. We gotta go, this is the conference. And I'm just saying, after January 1, any rental is 2%. That's my key.
thoughts? Councilmember Sir?
It's clean. It is what the voters voted for. It will put some property owners in an awkward position for a short time.
Let me ask Councilmember Fagan a question. You're in the restaurant, or in the hotel business. And I think you've also worked front desk. If tax comes in, how would a hotel handle that if we gave them, as suggested, any stay after the 1st of January, you automatically, everyone pays the even if there's any reservation earlier, how would the hotel that you work at? And
Great question. I think there's two ways to do that. One way, the guests will be accepting of the new tax, the new increase in price after the purchase. And the second would be that they're not okay with that. And the operator, but we're not going to argue with the guests on $50 whatever it is. We still eat that cost and that will impact our financials. So that's the two ways to do that. They're okay with it, or we as the operator, right, hold it and take that hit to us.
all right. Can I have Councilmember Davis?
Man, we've been talking about this for months. All of these operators should be aware. I can't believe they don't have that. So I think we need to do.
That is, what I'm hearing is the direction to staff that the tax be effective on, be collected, effective day, on the first of January, late, simple approach,
Yes.
regardless of what it is. And so I'll ask for five spoken. I'm frankly for it. I've heard from one member of the community, that a small operator who has, reservations and they pay in advance, and as the lodging tax was implemented, that's how it was implemented by the county. Anything after first of January, or 2 years ago, they had to, pay the tax, and the lodging operator, as Councilmember Hagan mentioned, chose to eat that 2%. On the other hand, I'm concerned about the complexity of anything. How do you ensure that we're really, because we are not auditing every submission. We're just collecting a tax amount at the end of each month. So how do you verify, or an operator who could potentially gain the system? And I'm torn, so, but anyway, back to the question of who would pay in favor of the giving staff the direction, the simple approach comes up. You have your directions.
So I think it would be cleaner
Right.
to, because this is on the consent agenda, it's already a draft ordinance. You don't like the language that's there, or you would like for additional language to be included. So I would recommend that you remove it from the consent agenda to amend the language in the ordinance.
And could you give us the draft language you'd like to see?
I probably would, I will give you a motion, but I think that the language would be, or that the motion would include direction rather than specific language, and then that way you can work with it. The other thing that you might want to consider to provide clarity going forward after January 1 is just like the state does related to deposits. The deposits are not taxed. But the tax is then charged when the full purchase price is paid. Is that something that you would want?
Oh, is that just minimum clarity?
To make one collection day, is that what you're saying?
One collection date, if the deposit is non-refundable and somebody doesn't say they're not paying taxes on that deposit. It's just a $200 deposit. So again, we can go different ways. I'm just clarifying as to, I think we should clarify as to when the tax needs to be collected and under which circumstances related to a deposit, if it's taxes collected on a deposit or not.
I mean, one question, if this were sales, if this was the state sales tax, how would the state handle the deposit?
State does not charge sales tax on a deposit. We charge the sales tax once the full purchase price is paid, and the deposit is included in the full purchase
Right.
price. It's just not paid, when somebody makes a reservation. So it's paid all at once, you make your reservation on January 15th, you pay March 15th, you pay a deposit on January 15th, you don't pay sales tax on January 15th.
So someone, if a owner of a property accepted a deposit for the full amount, that deposit should not include the sales tax?
Well, if they're paying the full purchase price, then I would say that should include the sales tax.
If that was then canceled and they never completed the stay,
Then they're paying the full price of the rental, then that's paying their purchase.
so in that case, the owner of the property would be able to reap that additional percentage,
No,
they wouldn't have to pay the tax.
no, I think that the owner of the remit the sales tax or the water tax and probably the sales tax to the state. It's when they only pay the renter only pays a short, $200, not the full amount. That's when the sales tax is not flat.
All right. All right, so if someone was renting, paid the full amount, it included sales tax, and that reservation was canceled, then the person who is I'm struggling with the collector, then the collector would be obligated, once that reservation was canceled, to remit to the state or to the town that portion that was taxed.
Yes.
And if I may, under verbal,
Yeah.
under my rental, the deposit that's due includes all fees and taxes. If there's a cancellation, even if it's beyond my refundable date, verbal will refund the tax and certain of the fees to the section.
So that's different then.
Yeah, all the discussion to date has been about occupying a rental. That's what triggers this tax. Whether you pay it the day you arrive, 2 days before, the last day of the rental. It seems to be about occupation, not paying ahead shouldn't be a penalty. I don't,
No, but I think what she has said is that if the reservation is canceled, then the owner of the person who is ready, who is the landlord, would then be required to pay that tax back to the person who's ready.
That's not what I said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's not what I said. But again, you can do it how you want, and if that's how, a platform does it, VRBO, Airbnb, if they remit the sales tax back, if there's a full cancellation, you could do it that way.
But I guess in our case, probably from a town perspective, it shouldn't make a difference. If someone's made an advance reservation, they cancel the reservation, they didn't complete the stay, therefore, there's no tax for us to collect.
If I may, there's two options here. Set the point of the taxes assessed at the point of exchange of goods, or the taxes assessed at payment for the goods. And for example, as our attorney brought up, if you order from Amazon, you pay your taxes at payment of the goods. I did just look up New York, they actually specify what to do for changing local tax, and they're at exchange of goods, at occupancy of the rental unit. So I think that's, if I'm correct, that's your choices.
So I guess then the direction that we gave was an exchange of goods.
Okay,
Thank you.
so this will then be part of the motion that you made to taking this up with the consent agenda, revising the order.
And if you could draft that motion.
I will, yeah.
All right, Councilmember Kerr.
before we move on. Is this ordinance, is that required to put the tax into effect or simply to create the fund?
It is to administer the tax.
Okay, so the fact that if we do a first reading next week, a second reading in December, does it not take place? Can it go into effect before the 30 days after?
So the plan is for this to do a first reading tonight. But let me just say, this is what the plan is. To do a first reading tonight, and then have it approved second reading at the second meeting in November. And then you have it effective on January 1.
So,
Let's change it.
well, it does because we haven't seen the language.
No, the first reading, we would be giving direction, change the language in the first reading.
Second thing is, there's a comment in there that says that vendors may appeal tax assessment. Can't see how an assessment can take place since we put the onus on the renter and the all mandatory and all that.
There is a section that talks about, I think that is section 10, where there's tax overpayments and deficiencies. The town manager can determine if there is a deficiency and can provide an assessment.
Based on what?
You do audits of people's books and stakes and determine if there is, people aren't paying
So
taxes.
this is giving the town manager authority to audit.
Yeah,
That's what-
yeah,
Spelled out.
Yeah.
audit in section 9.
Okay. Good, because like 13 is all about penalties and things and hearings and things, that's all assumes that we can understand. Can this new software be invested in? Will that give us a sense of what STRs or lodging is being rented?
So part of the package with Deckard is that they do monitor the bookings and they have projections based off of the data that they're getting for the sites over a period of time. So they do have some projections of what the lodging is, and they have said that they're able to kind of tell between when it's actual bookings versus when it's marked off for owner stays. So it's supposed to be fairly accurate, but I'm interested to see how that continues to work as we.
In addition, we receive a sales tax report from the state monthly that lists each of the individual payers by their sales tax numbers. We also have, with the lodging tax collection, we should be getting that same information. So we would be able to compare the 2% sales tax numbers. This is, again, largely with small range. And 2% lodging tax numbers, and they probably ought to be the same.
Yeah, okay, I guess that because it's only appropriate that if we're going to do this, we have some mechanisms to make sure it's fair and forced, put into place across the town.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Kind of unrelated, but going through, I had written, I was worried about the section, on
What page?
on page 11. It said that all books and ways of accounts and non-records contained on the account limit can be opened at any time for great business hours. I mean, a lot of these people are not here. So, I mean, how is that a practical thing? And then the second question to that was confidentiality. How does that work?
Okay, I'm trying to find where
It's,
the first
section 9B,
9 feet.
page 11.
I mean, that is something that is just that if we want to take a look at your books, you need to make a.
Yeah, it implies that they're here all the time.
Yes, but I think it's
Can
just
we
that they
reach out to the STR system?
Yeah.
With who's on management, whatever their higher headquarters is?
Councilmember Davis.
Aren't they required with the SDRs to have a responsible agent? So I don't think they need to be here. And if they,
I don't interpret this to mean that the person has to be here. that you have to have your information available and the town manager, or the designee could ask for inspection of those records.
My point is, it just sounds a little, it just sounded like, hey, I need your books. So if that's clear to other people, you know.
Yes, and there would not be enforcement because somebody didn't have actual documents in the, Keystone.
But they would have to provide those
They
documents.
have to provide, yes,
Yeah.
that's the goal with this section, is they need to be able to provide them and make them available for inspection.
Could be electronic.
Because the word kind of copy, available and the town limit at any time. That's, I was just nervous.
You got something?
That was just my question, is could we, maybe move the section that is in print, like, I don't read this as, it says print, like a physical ledger, but some people might read it that way, so they're not that be helpful.
We can clarify it, and yes, we can clarify it. I want to give the town staff the most discretion to be able to ask for this information when they need it, because typically these are people who are evading their responsibility, and so we want to be able to give this information.
So, yes. Is it a yes or a no?
Well, I don't think it needs to be clarified, but if the majority of council wants that, then that would be part of their.
Thumbs up or thumbs down? Or
I think it's.
I think that would leave the language like it is.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Councilmember Kerr.
So there's in the whereas in the background information, it summarizes the language from the ballot question. But in, of course, in section 8 about the lodging tax fund, it uses new language. It said it will be spent on capital infrastructure projects, highway 6 safety, and maintenance of infrastructure and public safety. So my question is, why would we keep the language we went to the voters for, especially since maintenance is not really a capital improvement or investment? I just don't know where this language comes from.
I drafted it. So
I knew, but we want to be consistent.
yeah, I revised the language for simplicity. Purposes to take out the parenthetical. The parenthetical to me in the ballot question was kind of marketing to say that this is what we are going to be using the money for. I think that the language in the ordinance is consistent with the ballot language. I don't think that there are any. It doesn't have any effect on what you can spend money on based on the revenue. However, if that's not what you want, we can revise it.
Yeah, I would have to take umbrage that the language in the ballot was marketing. I think that was exactly our intent of what that funding could be, that money could be used for. So we had no intent of putting that in there for marketing. That was how we were going to spend the money.
Did we put maintenance?
No,
Yeah, maybe it is.
oh, it's not.
Yes, it was in there. Yes.
What's the ballot? Read the ballot language.
Capital infrastructure projects, highway safety and maintenance, such as improvements to streets and trails and public safety.
And that's
Well,
what I was took out the such as language to explain what they.
I feel like we were very clear to voters that we intended this money to be investments, capital and revenues. More than an operating a single year operating. So, and then reread it that way.
The language in section 8 says maintenance of infrastructure.
Maybe we could, use a language right out of ballot. Okay, it's just.
That's what you all want.
Language out of ballot.
Well, that's what you said, we feel that there was included.
It was, yes,
Yeah,
it
then-
was included in the ballot.
Just don't hurt ourselves. And we're clarity and, we call it consistency.
I mean, probably not. It probably, people aren't gonna be looking at what the line item expenses are. Sometimes I worry a little bit about parentheticals because if your expense isn't included in your such as, then somebody can say, oh, well, that's not part of the maintenance that you can be spending money for. I don't think that's gonna be an issue. So if it's important to all of you that it's consistent with the ballot language, then we can add it.
I just don't want to do we call it even if there's no substance to it.
Yeah, I just remember the front end of that ballot language, which was infrastructure and public safety. I guess I didn't pay a lot of attention to the parenthetical. Could you read that parenthetical again?
I was reading incorrectly because we made changes. I was reading from not the minutes, but the actual, the proposal in the packet. But our attorney looks like she's picking up the exact language.
I don't remember maintenance.
Maintenance is in there, but I will give the exact language. Okay, so with the revenues of such tax to be spent on capital infrastructure projects, highway 6 safety and maintenance, parenthetical such as improvements to streets and trails and public safety.
And it has a different tone. But I would love to see that language reproduced here.
Councilmember Hagan,
I think the big thing that sticks out specifically in that language that makes both the difference is that it says improvements to public trails to the maintenance, right? So I think that improvement shows that it's a one-time expense and not an ongoing maintenance.
Oh, if I may step in here, we have to be real careful that we're not cutting ourselves out at the knees. Maintenance of roads is really important. I don't want to come to a situation where we don't have money to maintain roads, only to build new roads. And especially since maintenance of streets was specifically in the ballot question, I think if we have to go and repave the street, my opinion is that the people who voted for this expected that their tax money is going to keep our roads at a higher level and build new roads and pathways where necessary.
I think that's a strong endorsement for us. Do that.
I disagree. I think that that's where the restriction, right? Because if we're talking about improvements and you're only going to say that it's one time thing, I'm sorry, if you build a trail, maintenance is part of building a trail. If you build a road, maintenance is part of building that road. I see it all the time. Money is allocated to build trails in the woods and then they fall apart because no one ever thought about maintenance. We didn't come up with this. The voters didn't vote for the idea of building a road without any ability to maintain it out of the same fund. And if we need to plow the road, we need to do any of those things, that is an improvement over where we came from. I think that's what the taxpayers want.
No, I disagree. I think that's what the taxpayer expected the general fund to pay, the, what we'll call the annual maintenance things versus the big bill expenses of remilling and repaving. I think that's clearly what part of the intent of the ballot issue was. It was not an annual, we gotta go out and spray weeds along the pathway. We have to pay for pothole repair. I don't think that was the intent of that language. That's what we had general funds allocated for. This was to handle the big infrastructure, big ticket items that we needed to for our infrastructure as well as the new projects, particularly the new projects that we need for Highway 6. But I'm just parsing the maintenance word, because a lot of us had a view of maintenance as your annual to-dos, not your major infrastructure changes that you had later, that you're going to pay every 10, 20 years. Councilmember Curtis.
I wholly concur with what you just said. But given the fact that there are different interpretations of this table, I think it's important that we duplicate the language that we offer to voters. Purpose in section 8.
Mr. Town Manager.
Yeah, and I was not inclined that, well, although different people could interpret it different ways, I think milling and repaving of roads is not a one-off. It's something we know we're going to have to do every X number of years on all of our roads. I'm just afraid that the council is leaning towards, we're only going to use this for new projects. I don't think it should be used for snow plowing. I don't think it should be used for filling potholes. But I think it should be used to make sure if a road needs a major repair, which all roads will, it should be able to come out of this fund too. Yes.
Yeah, Councilmember Sullivan.
I just want to ask a question. The definition of maintenance, so that's what we're fighting over.
Yeah.
Is the way you have it written, is that consistent with what you can defend? That was in the ballot language.
Well, I think the parenthetical does explain it a little bit. I mean, I'm just trying to think how this is gonna be coming up. And it's gonna be probably more dialogue between you and the manager when you're setting the budget and whether something is appropriate for this fund or for a different fund. So the maintenance of infrastructure is different from, I think it's different from maintenance such as improvements to streets and trails. There's an argument that it's different. I think there's an argument that's the same, so.
What could you defend?
Well, it depends on what you want to do. If you don't want it to be used for, filling potholes, simple road maintenance, then probably it should be the same as the ballot language.
Any heartburn with that, Town Manager? Can you live in that environment?
I can live in anybody.
So then, is it a thumbs up on the ballot language?
It's fine.
All right. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Resolution for the motion.
I really, good one.
All right. Next item is discussion of street maintenance.
This is not the maintenance regulation. This is, although it could be at some point in the future. Although right now, I'm going to pass this off to our Public Works Director. But I have to be clear, we were intending to have, we've actually contracted with an engineering company to do a road assessment of all our roads. Then winter moved in, that did not get done. So at this point, what we're really talking about is snow plowing. And in the future, once we can do a roads analysis, taking over entire maintenance responsibility for certain roads in the community. This is a limited number of roads based upon the feedback you gave us earlier. Although we anticipate this will be a phased approach in which all public right-of-ways are eventually completely the town's maintenance responsibility, not just snow plowing, but repairs to. And now pass off to our Public Works Director.
And we'll open, I guess I'll read our executive summary for everybody to look at. Staff was instructed by council to identify roads for which the town will take over maintenance responsibility. Resolution 2024 directed staff to take necessary steps to take responsibility for certain roads that meet criteria as defined by the council. In the last meeting we said, everybody gave us some direction to give on this. So background, the council has shown an interest in taking responsibility for the plowing and maintenance of certain roads.
Excuse me, I think we've all read the staff summary sheet. Could you just go to your recommendations?
Yes. So we have identified, as we all have in this, we've come up with a list of names for inclusion in our first road that will be kind of reiterate basically on our criteria. We have criteria for things.
Feedback.
We have criteria for things that were set out by the council for us to use to consider what roads we're going to take. We have public right of ways that are built in Keystone up to Keystone standards. And we also have roads that are serving major arterial routes and or serving major public transportation. So we've come up with a small list. And also, we also have roads that access Keystone spaces, places the town needs to be. So we've come up with a list that basically fulfills these obligations that you already, fulfills goals that you gave us to look at as far as what you stipulated in the criteria. For maintenance so far, what we've looked at, we've got St. John's, David. Mostly the all major arterial roads is part of what defined them for us. Like, so everything on this list that this is like I said, this is phase one. So our goal is to get our larger roads, our major artery roads that we have in the east side of the Independence, west side of the Center Ridge, the Wild Irishman area. Oh, sorry.
Let's focus on the list for the new roads.
Yeah,
And we posted the map up here. So the blue roads are roads we are already obligated to maintain. It's county separate responsibility. When the town incorporated, the town assumed that responsibility. There are a few roads marked out in red. There's thin, you can zoom in on that a little bit here. And those are the roads we're specifically talking about in this issue. Now, dark blue are roads we maintain because the county accepted responsibility, and roads marked in red are the roads we're discussing today because they meet one of the criteria that the council instructed staff to continue.
Again, what's the light blue?
The light blue are privately maintained roads that the county never accepted responsibility for maintenance of. So the town's not responsible for maintenance, and they do not currently meet the standards we set for phase one.
We don't know whether they meet the standards. Well, for the standards for phase one, yes. those in light blue are a mix of private roads and town right-of-way roads that are privately maintained.
Correct, yeah, they're privately maintained roads, some of them are privately owned, some are town right of ways to maintenance, who's never accepted by the county. So that for the purpose of this discussion, we're simply talking about the few roads you see in thin red.
Are you ready? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Could you compare for us the current number of miles that we have taken on from the county and the number of miles that we're going to?
Like, roughly to not, I think you have a total, which would be possibly. The total, I can get you the total, so it's been pulled out of the actual.
Okay, get that so that we know that we're going from X to X slot.
So just doing quick math, we currently are responsible for just over 7 miles, and this would add just under 3 miles.
So approximately half.
Correct.
And that's the roads identified for inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for this year.
Josh, if you can go down the list.
Okay, so St. John's for evidence, I mean, it comes right through where we're at. It comes to town hall. It's going to be where any other kind of traffic that actually feeds to all this. Decatur Hill, y'all familiar with Decatur Hill Road?
Yeah.
Okay, so Decatur Hill drops down, it just feeds such a huge, it's actually a part of the county road. And it feeds a huge collector down there of HOAs, condos. It's just, it qualifies under our idea, yeah, it's serves as a major artery.
Josh, if we can just get more descriptive, so Decatur Hill Road to the bottom of the hill.
Okay.
That's where our maintenance is responsible.
Yeah, basically it'd be about around the house, do the rest of that.
No, it'd be, no,
It's all, it's all.
No, just the bottom of the
just the bottom of the hill.
Hill, just the bottom of the hill. Okay. Then we have tennis club, yes. It is,
Let's say.
yeah, it's, the tennis club serves a huge amount of people.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and it also is a major arterial transportation.
And if I may weigh in on Tennis Club Road for a bit, this is kind of a unique road in this list because there's a section of this that we're proposing taking over maintenance responsibility for that is a privately owned road. It's owned by Tennis Club Town.
And a portion of it's also owned by Vail Resorts.
And a portion by Vail Resorts. After we get the road assessment in the spring, and we've brought this up to Tennis Club Townhomes and Vail Resorts, we will expect the road to be dedicated to the town, the entire right of way, if we're going to take full maintenance responsibility. As I said, this is a unique road, it's a private road, but it certainly meets the criteria that it's a very important transportation pathway for public transportation around town.
And
Yes, right.
everything you said makes perfect sense. Is there any other road that we're looking at in that you would characterize? Then look to make a town road.
Not in this list, but in phase 2, there will be certain,
There may be.
there may be certain roads. If the town does not receive the dedicated right of way, it's going to be an issue taking full responsibility for full maintenance. So
Thank you.
Okay, and then, Elk Spur Lane, the Elks. It is, it was that, I think the county had that one, and we ended up
No, that's the emergency evacuation.
Oh, emergency evacuation.
So that
That would also fit.
So,
Then Gondola Road is on this one. Gondola serves all of Keystone, and it serves bus route, it serves, it's part of our lifeline here. Antlers Gulch Road. Antlers Gulch Road is pretty unique. If you're going through Wintergreen to the Gulch, it's that odd little strip of road right there that's had a whole lot of issues. Part of it's the county had it, I think, and the other part of it's privately owned. It's very, for one little slot of road, it's been chopped up multiple times. And we think it just feeds on thoroughfares and it's on a transit. And I think that's a transportation route to the public state.
So,
But bus.
the yellow can tell.
that connotes area that's not in Keystone.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't- that's like food sense.
Gulf Road serves as an kind of similar to Elksford emergency. Access.
And then next we have Rio Grande, which is basically right where you pull in to go to the snake there. It just serves such a huge influx right there. That one road goes to Gateway, Cinnamon. It just,
That's what that road's name.
Rio Grande Road.
And it also serves Snake River Water District headquarters, which is really a facility.
Yeah.
And then we have River Run Road, pretty evident. It's a huge artery, serves multiple condominiums down in River Run Square.
Could you comment more on that, Mr. Town Manager?
Yeah, River Run Road and Idabel, which follow here, and Durkin. These three roads are crucial to the transportation situation of the buses around the River Run Basin.
Then we have West Independence and East Independence and Independence Line. Those three basically link up to form all of our east side settlers, it's our major artery that pulls everything together. Side.
And
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Currently, those roads are maintained by Keystone Neighborhood Company.
On this, we have alternatives still, same alternatives, because it continue to be privately done as it is now before we show that. Impacts, financial impact, yeah, we're looking at around a $90,000 a year contribution to start to assume the equity in our streets and make a policy. First phase of it.
I guess for the purpose of this workshop, does council feel this is a complete list? Are there any roads they wish to add or remove from this list?
well, this seems to be a list we discussed at the executive meeting. We clarified that we wanted to eventually add many more. But given the fact that we are new and working our way through, this seemed like a smart phase one. That doesn't mean we've missed something, but you've captured our
So, and Councilmember Davis.
And as I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking toward the future, there's really not much on the west side. I'm assuming we're thinking about that for phase two.
Well, most of the west side, yeah, the county had accepted responsibility for originally, so,
That
yeah,
clarifies.
so we have responsibility for those already through our.
Like West Keystone, so, okay, that was, I would probably set it before, but it's been 3 weeks, so.
So, Councilmember Kerr.
So, given the fact that some people with a lot don't know everything, and they can see something, would you address the opportunity for folks in the town to appeal our decisions?
Town Manager.
Not against it, but maybe it.
Certainly anyone that they can come forward and we can add things with the council's approval. If they need, the council is adopting for phase one as part of this resolution, the criteria for acceptance. And we're kind of up against it with snowplow, so that's why there's not been a lot of time for feedback from the community at this point. But if someone feels that their road or a road or something should be accepted by maintenance in this phase one, they can certainly come reach out to me and I'll bring it forward to the
It's all mine.
council.
And there's also a process, I believe, in a code that allows someone to petition the town to have them included for the town to take over maintenance responsibility of the road.
Yes, there is.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Kind of a dumb question, but there's an awful lot of light blue out there, which we're seeing. We're assuming you guys are going to continue doing what you're doing today.
This is phase one.
There's a lot of people, there's a lot of different contracts, a lot of different HOAs. Is the community, do you feel aware that we're not taking over all roads? That there's a lot of private ones, you're going to continue to do those this year. We're not going to get stuck. People thinking the town was going to just do everything.
No,
Just nervous.
there's almost all the roads on the east side are maintained by KNC. So, almost all are maintained by KNC, and they're aware that there's only a limited number of roads coming in at this time. The ranch is very aware that they're still responsible for their road maintenance. There's unfortunately on this map, a big section heading out to the ranch on Ranch Road, which isn't even out. So that's county engineering figure out responsibility there like they have in the past. For most people, it's the status quo, and they're aware of that. We haven't necessarily reached out. They're not aware of any possible changes. The ones that we're contemplating for inclusion have been made aware. So,
And also in the roads that are in light blue, there's a fair number of them that are actually really private roads. That there should be no expectation that the town would be taking over those. For instance, an example of that would be the Peters Road going up to the Timbers and Lone Eagle. That is a private road. And I would not envision the town ever picking up that $100,000+ a year maintenance.
Yeah, that's a heated road all the way from there to here.
Correct, that's one example.
I didn't realize that.
You're paying. Right. Is then, I take it that, I think this is on the agenda for the council meeting tonight, so we will revisit this again this evening. So, if there's not any other comments or clarification, let's move on in the budget. Town manager.
okay, so this is part of the, pull up my packet here. This is part of the, this is your turn to weigh in on the budget. You can go over this with as fine tooth comb as you want. We will be bringing the budget at the next meeting for final adoption with the necessary resolutions. A lot of these numbers were based on projections that actually this council made in our original budget way back. With some adaptation from our accountants and some adaptations from you. This budget now includes, you know, it's not official, the 2% lodging tax that was passed. I guess see if there's, I made notes on things that I can't figure out how to get highlighted squares. To go to the PDF, I'm a little bit befuddled on that. The clerk can do it, I can't do it. And I do exactly what she did. So this is our, there have been a few changes made since the last packet was presented for our public hearing. No one gave any input during the public hearing. So, this is the public input time from me, the board. We've adjusted some of the pay ranges. This includes now a finance director position. I'll go through some big things. I'll just start at the top. Our sales tax revenue,
Let me ask you a fundamental question.
Yeah.
You have three elements. First two are approved 2024 budget and the 2024 forecast. Second one, do we have tools for the, it's like,
no, we won't have actuals until,
can have,
well, we won't have actuals until,
well, sure, but we could estimate a line.
the forecast includes the estimate.
Okay,
Yeah.
so forecast is what we expect the actual will be. Okay.
Yeah,
Be able to make
correct. Forecast is what we expect the actuals will be based on our accountant's input.
Thank
I do have to tell you, I expect next year's budget to be, very different from this. Not a spreadsheet budget. Your town manager should have access to all our accounts as they're paid without having to reach out individually to our accountants every time with a question on what was paid into this. And next year budget will have better estimates as we get near the end of the year.
And just a question of process. So you say this is our opportunity to ask the question.
That's it. No, and make what changes you want to see. I'd like to report tonight.
I mean, if will we have, I mean, I think it's the next couple days. I want to know, really getting into something. So it's the.
No. And actually, under state law, anyone, not just council, anyone can reach out to me with changes they would like to see in our final budget before it's adopted. That especially is true for you as the council. This is, if you notice something that we didn't bring up tonight, bring it up to me before we have our final budget, and I'll figure it out. But I would really like to not make too many changes. Final adoption, you know, it should be a relatively clean and complete budget by that time. But please keep going over this and reach out to me with any details or changes that you might need. Yep. So I'll highlight a few things here. Sales tax, that our revenue has been up this year. This is projected on the flat revenue from our estimates. So to be dead honest, I expect our sales tax in 2025 to be higher than budgeted here. I don't like to budget higher than expectations, assuming everything's going to work out correctly. Good weather, high tourism numbers, restaurants stay open. I'd rather budget flat and be pleasantly surprised at the end of this year.
And since it looks very different than the 2024 number, can I get you confirmed that that 2024 number is for 10.5 months?
Yes,
Okay.
it leaves out pretty much our biggest 6 weeks of sales tax. In here, I have business licenses. This board has not approved business licenses, that is not adopted. We're going to have discussions about business licenses at future meetings. But it's okay to have, especially a revenue number that you don't collect it, rather than collecting and not budgeting for it.
$34,000 based on $75. That's $75 a month.
No,
How many businesses in the town have Keystone?
About 250.
Yeah.
It's anyone who does business in the town.
so that would include contractors who
Okay,
come into town and work on homes.
get that, thank you.
Yeah, it's not just, fixed businesses. It's, and the reason I put this in here is, as we'll discuss in more depth when we actually talk about business licenses, it's important if we do have a business license program, that's for the safety and assurance of our citizens. So it's not just to fix businesses. They need to know that someone coming in to repair the roof actually is demonstrated to the town that they are a real business, not just a door-to-door scammer trying to get your money and never providing product.
Thank you.
Municipal court fines and code enforcement fees are just, it's really a lot of raw speculation on my part, kind of based upon numbers from Blue River in the past. As I saw, we had like 1,000 people going 10 miles an hour or over. It could be significantly higher than that. It all depends on what fees the council determine and what level of enforcement you want going forward. For income for grants, we simply put the grants that we already have in there. We anticipate that we will be getting significantly more grant money in the coming year, but we don't want to budget for something we haven't even identified as applying for.
So the grant money here includes the town manager, which is over 3 years. How much? Is it 115 out of that 3-year grant that's gonna go into this budget? And how much?
I couldn't answer that off the top of my head.
I think it's 25% of the salary.
Yeah.
Your salary.
Interest on investments is, we're making good interest in Cobble Trust. So, and we have listed, right now, I think we have approximately $1.4 million in assets. Interest on that money can add up relatively quickly. Office lease, that's a big number there. That's in anticipation that we are going to likely enter into a lease purchase agreement for this property, for the entirety of the property, and then we'll lease out others. That number will change. That one way or another, that number will be changing as we work through negotiations with the Keystone site for the building. I just wanted a safe number put in there at this point.
John, how does that jive with the number that you have, 600K that you're like? Bill,
My anticipation on purchasing this building, we can't go into a typical mortgage because we're a government. So the only way, there are 3 ways we could use to make purchases, or 4 ways. Cash purchase, certificates of participation, which we can't do because we don't have assets yet. And a lease purchase. So I'm anticipating the 600,000 I have for land purchase will be kind of a down payment on the property, and we'll have to write this contract very clear and distinctly, purchasing the property and purchasing the building separately from the property. There's funds, Prop 123 funds, our housing funds that we can use to purchase the land if we intend to put housing on. We can't use those funds to purchase the building. So this would be just, this money is just for the lease purchase of the building at this time.
So to clarify for explanations, a lease purchase for the building needs, we're going to put this much rental money against a larger figure later for the building?
We will rent out the building, they will credit our rental payments as a purchase price, or towards the purchase price.
Do we know?
No, and that's what I said, this will change. So this will change. It was big enough to cover at least the entire building, just the lease of the entire building.
Okay.
Continuing to move down, website, we moved to our capital budget. And I want to be very clear, there are two different types of capital funds. We have our lodging tax fund, and then we have our capital special projects funds. So the website was moved to capital special projects funds. Under mayor and town council, community support. So that includes child care tuition assistance. And it includes, and I'll get approval before we make any of these specific payments too. They'll come up to the council. Summit Foundation passes through the use of staff and volunteers and council members, council planning commission, people on our committees and staff. The Summit Foundation passes enable scheme throughout the community. It's a donation to the Summit Foundation. It's also a staff and will go to the council benefit.
You're saying this is just a placeholder right now?
Yes.
So what I would like to suggest is, I object to having them under the town council. If these were donations made by 7 people, we're spending town money. And so each of these things that we decide to do should be able to be communicated as a service to the town and its people. For example, the child care tuition assistance, which we've already signed the IGA for, is the rationale support for economic development. Should we do the tree top? That would be public health investment under, maybe that could go under public safety. This just looks like, oh, the council decided to max donate. I don't think that's not right. I think we should be clarifying what we want to spend town money for, what the purpose, how that improves or the quality of life for the town or something like that. Thoughts on that?
Every other town in Summit County has a single line that handles all the donations. I think it'd be difficult for breaking out the budget in each of the individual areas. I think if we can explain what that money is being used for in a single line, it's much easier to keep track of. Just the way it is.
Well, by that rationale, we would break between all payroll under a single line. We're not. I'm willing to wait for next year's budget to address this again, but I think it's important that we clarify why, just how we're spending.
Question. Any other comments by council members? Councilmember Barnett?
I think we're just breaking up a lot of things a lot of ways, but if this is the next practice, of local government. It should break our brains over it.
Okay, this is very clear.
Well,
I bet I back up, but this is about clarifying why. And that's something we should definitely address.
clarification could be in the budget scriptures of what the money is being used for, and it could be covered.
Yeah, and if I, thank you. I agree that there should be more clarity in this next year, and I think it took me a while to wrap my head around the way the communities in Summit County, fund various nonprofit organizations and entities. All the municipalities I've dealt with before have generally run one dedicated charitable fund through an institution such as the Summit Foundation. In Grant County, all the municipal governments have a single line item, charitable donations, and they're given to the Grant Foundation, who operates donor advised funds and makes the decisions with the town's approval. So this was done because I did not quite understand how Suffolk County did it yet when I was putting the budget together, but we can definitely readdress this in next year's budget. I agree completely.
And I'm going to repeat this one more time. We need to clarify why we think it's good for this town to invest in. Not saying we don't, but there are dozens of nonprofits in the county. And so we need to understand why we would choose each. For example, Summit Foundation gives money to True Child and gives money to Bright Futures. So I am not here to criticize.
Yeah.
I am here to say, let's get everything on.
Yeah.
I'm not correct that any time a decision is made on spending that money, that would be through a resolution process, which would clearly spell out what the purpose for that expenditure.
Yeah, yes, especially for issues like even the lesser dollar ones where our policy allows me to spend it. I would bring to the board because these are town donations to something else. This is not operations of our standard operations of our government. So I would always bring that to the council for.
So look for line items under community support with those discussions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me back up. Are you looking for a line item for each of those charities right now to be in the budget? Or,
I think they deserve to be under I think they deserve to be under the portion of the budget that they support. I said we can go this year.
no,
And readdress next year, but for this particular one, we should spell out under community support.
I disagree. I think the council needs the flexibility as we go through the year to determine we haven't determined the amount yet that we're going to be spending on any of it. This is a placeholder, $100,000, of which about $80,000 are expected to be provided through the nicotine tax.
I hope it's that much.
But that's what projection is. About 80,000 is projected from the nicotine tax. And I think we need the flexibility to be able to determine as the time comes, which of those charities that we believe need to be supported by the town. And put it in bed, it codifies them that we're going to donate to that charity by that amount.
A line item would codify it. Budget note doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, budget note doesn't, but a line item does.
Oh, yeah.
But I agree. We will have discussions about this on next year's budget. Approach all of these in a different, more informed way. I apologize. Just took a while to figure out what the heck all these stats and stuff probably would get. Under all of our departments I've made, we've called out line items for each individual position. At this point, the only individual position I'm calling out is the town manager wages. That number is not what I get paid. That's something we'll talk about in May. But it's placeholder there, so 700,000 is too much. All the other positions, we just combine into their administrative wages, community development wages, public works wages. It's not, we need as a government to publish wage ranges, and we'll approve those at the beginning of the year, but we don't need to publish the exact wages of all employees.
So I wanted to have a conversation about the Keystone House incentive. I can see the difference, 15,000, 2,000 dispersed. I'll call out being the 10, 12 months, something dragging it out. But could you explain to us how that incentive is applied for staff? Is it a set amount per employee per month? Is it a proportion of your wage?
It's a set amount for, it's 6,000 a year
Okay,
per employee.
thank you.
Scrolling down, we've upped community engagement quite a bit because we've got a lot to reach out to the community for this year as we're going through our comprehensive plans. We're starting the strategic plan. This is for outreach to the community. Various things like that. Our attorney, we've bumped that money up quite a bit because our attorney's doing quite a bit of work for us. And we'll continue to as we start to develop our own town code here over the coming year. Short-term rental contract support basically remains the same. Accounting contract, I cut that budget number significantly under the assumption that the council will be okay with a creation of a finance department, which is farther below. Now, let me explain why we need a finance department here. As our tax collection for the lodging tax, I'll start from the very beginning. Home rule municipalities have to collect their own taxes. We are very unique in the fact that we don't have a sales tax. Technically, our sales tax money is a county sales tax. We're just operating under a 1970s IGA, which allows the state to disperse certain monies collected under that tax directly to the municipality that that's collected from. So we did not have a tax collection issue until we passed the 2% lodging tax. The state will not collect that tax for us. We're responsible for collecting it. So that will, and that's auditing the books. That's double checking, making sure that everyone's paying according to our records according to their own personal records, cross-check with the sales tax records, as the mayor pointed out, which will still be collected by the state, and from what we get from our monitoring software. So we're going to bring on another staffer just to deal with lodging tax collection. I would be much happier if we had a full finance director in here who can take care of our day-to-day accounting, bookkeeping, financial planning, monitoring of our IGAs, helping out with payroll and HR. I feel it's, as I said, this budget was very difficult because I'm used to an accounting program where I can go click on a line item and see all the invoices that had to do with that line item before. This is what we're getting from our account. And it makes it difficult to run the town. I think it would be cost efficient for us and certainly just efficient to be able to have all our finance in-house under one roof. So if you are okay with financial department wages, it will allow us to leave our current accounting.
Councilmember Davis.
What's your timing on that? I'm just curious.
If it's approved in the budget, I will post the position. I've already, there are several people who are ready to come to work in that position, who I'd be very happy to have.
So early January,
Yeah, we need to get someone in here in January so they can set up the lodging tax collection program. I've included some money for the accountant so that we have an overlap of the new position and our current accountants.
Do we need to wait till the budget is approved to move forward on that? Can we do it by resolution? Is there one?
Well, if
Give more time.
you give me a thumbs up. we'll see.
I have a question. I think you're applying the cost effective reason for the cost from county will go down, the cost of payroll potentially, and not pick up the new work on it. Right, so that basically pay for this now.
Between the savings and the account, what we would have to pay, if we don't go full finance director, we still need a tax collector in town. So between the cost savings of tax collector would not be the full price I'm asking here for the finance director. But when you combine the savings from the accountant not paying the accountants and from not paying the tax collector,
Will payroll, operational costs go down because of this person? You mentioned payroll.
Yeah, we're still, I feel it's best, still, I've done both ways, operated payroll in-house. And, it's a nightmare.
You didn't have, but you mentioned payroll.
But good thing, our payroll will be much more efficiently managed and we won't have to contract with Employers Council. Right now, we contract with Paylocity and Employers Council to oversee our payroll and our HR.
So that's what's along the lines, but it's the software required, since we're not going to use the AI.
And there will be software. I have that for their computer services. So that's what happens as well.
That's significant. It's not
Yeah.
paid one.
There's a one time and then it'll probably be somewhere between a third to a half of that for
Municipal government.
I would like to go with Keystone, which is.
That's this budget's.
Yes, that's under the finance. Scroll down, see what else we have here. Like I said, combined wages in all our various departments as you get to community development. Building permits, inspections, that number dropped to zero. Because we're contracting with the county. The county collects the permit itself. That's offset in our current budget. We show a lot of money coming in for permits. That number plummets too. So this savings is offset by a savings in revenue, which I should have. Building permits, way up at the top under revenue, it's going down from 203,000 to 40,000. We still will get some permitting money for the planning analysis that we do. since I back up under revenue, reimbursable community development costs. $20,000 revenue line there. That will be offset by, that's basically if they bring in planning that we need engineering or some outside consultant to review. It's the responsibility of the developer to pay those fees. This shows where the fees come in. And then under community development expenditures, those fees go back out. So that is not, it's true income, but it's offset by expense. In the same way that the whole building permit was income that we budgeted, but it would have been offset by what we paid the town. Here, that's where we have professional services contracted under community development. That's offset by what we charge developers to bring those fees in. Public Works. Those numbers, we get to road maintenance, snow plowing contract. That's in overestimate. It will be less than that, anticipate around 170,000. Didn't know when we were putting the budget together, we were still reaching out, trying to determine what roads we were going to be responsible. And this is generally just plowing and the low level maintenance that we talked about, like pothole filling, things like that. The Keystone roads currently counting and paying actually. That number is pretty firm. It's going to go up a little bit because of what we decided today. But they, under that contract, they cover this basic road maintenance too. They fill files under that contract. It's not just plowing numbers. The other numbers are pretty much just plowing, except for other maintenance.
And so if we can make this jive with what we talked earlier about road maintenance. Is that line item called roads not county maintained, is covering the additional roads we talked about this morning? So this is.
Trail maintenance, signage, engineering services. I have engineering a lot here in this budget. This engineering service is for things like our road assessments that we're having done next year. We'll have an assessment done of this entire building before we enter in any sort of agreement other than a simple lease on this building. So that covers those types of issues. And miscellaneous maintenance is exactly that knows what we're gonna have. But minor little things might pop up. Down under public safety. Okay. So I want to explain this, and this might be open for discussion. This is the general fund, public safety. And in it, the numbers I put in the budget for public safety are based on what we've discussed if we enter a new joint police force with Ellen and Dylan. This is generally the number that we had for law enforcement in our initial budget. Under the 2% lodging tax, I put two items dealing with law enforcement. One is $250,000 for purchase of capital equipment, police vehicles, guns, tasers, vests, one-time purchases for law enforcement. And I've included in the lodging tax fund, $200,000 for law enforcement for police services, which is just the general contract. That 200,000 and this 556,000, so I get back up to that, 556,414 offset the rest of the contract with the police. I know there's been discussion that we should do all law enforcement under the general funds, public safety. We have the funds in general funds. I put the 200,000 in there, and this is at your discretion. Because I guess when I saw public safety in our 2% lodging tax, my assumption was that public safety was for heightened law enforcement over what we've had here in the past. But we can move those numbers however you wish.
Councilmember Solo.
I'm a little confused with pieces. Coming into that. I realize things are different funds and it's hard to know what's one off, which is, ongoing. For me, it'd be nice to have, I put it in different areas. It'd be nice to have somewhere area where you really understand what.
And the order is based on topic is.
Yeah, it's tough. And I'll do that in my budget report, which comes along with the budget, which I'll break it out there by areas and by funds, but it's important to do this. We're legally obligated to spend by funds. And for instance, when we do major construction, when we put pathways along Highway 6, those funds are going to come out of the 2% and out of the general. Even though they'll be going to pay the exact same single line item bill, the funds will come out of the two different areas. So I will do summaries of things like this in my budget.
I do find it confusing that we're moving 431K out of the general fund into the capital non-routine project. Whereas if we kind of have policing under the general fund, the routine policing and capital improvements associated with policing in either the capital improvements or the 2% fund, that would just cleaner for us to understand.
Just felt, and this is kind of the bait and switch that we want to avoid.
Yes.
I put the police services, the 2% fund, because public safety was called out in the ballot question, and one of my jobs is to protect you politically, and I don't want you having to explain to people, we voted for this to fund police, why is it not funding police? But we can.
But there kind of needs to be one. It'd be nice to have a summary, pull in various pieces. Because I know what it's at public.
But I don't see any reason to do general fund. To routine policing out of the general fund, since we have money for it. And here's why. I was talking to Joshua today. It's $1.9 million, almost $2 million. 1,400 feet sidewalk along that one expansive villa along US 6. We have huge numbers of things that we should spend money on, and we should be able to consider.
Clear that up a little. The 465,000 that I say I moved out from the initial budget I presented to the board, which did not contemplate a lodging tax. So that number is different from what was budgeted for this year.
Okay,
for public
good
safety.
explanation. Will we see another one that fully anticipates the 2%?
Yeah, we'll get down to the whole 2% fund.
Then I mean, another budget that
This budget now contemplates 2%.
you're pulling 430.
No. 465 out of the budget that was presented in the end of September or the beginning of October. When I presented the initial budget to the board. I had a big increase in public safety over what was anticipated when the 24 budget was drafted.
I should be more clear.
Yeah.
Under capital, it says contribution for general fund.
Oh.
It's 431.6. And then under ways that you're proposing to spend it, it's to police vehicles.
It's a totally different.
Well, it's hard to see.
The numbers are different. The capital funds did not come out of, the 465,000 I call out in the note there for public safety is the difference in the initial public safety budget I presented you, which did not anticipate the lodging tax. And the current budget as written with the lodging tax. The funds, the capital come out from the funds, the capital come out of a different line.
But why?
Because that's how this other sources, $431,600 transferred to capital improvement.
The one thing I'm talking
So that had nothing to do with the public safety budget. That had to do, and that's the way we operated this year. We had almost 900,000 in capital improvements fund, capital improvements and special projects. And that money was transferred out of the general fund. Right now, we're budgeting $452,700 for capital improvements and non-routine projects. And that money will all come out of the general fund. Yeah, so that line is like, it's 199 on the spreadsheet.
I'm looking at 452. So. Okay, talk.
There's,
You're looking at line 239. Line item 239, budget, right?
I'm looking at the line item 217, contributions to the general fund.
Yeah.
Which needed to go for some of the staff things that we did this year. That makes total sense. We had lots. Didn't spend for the police vehicles. You're taking that out of 2%. But some of these things like space, comprehensive use and strategic plan. I guess you're saying this is general routine operating, but it's one off, not, maybe it's the terminology like that, one off report.
numbers just have to. Coincidentally, a lot of our numbers have to be very similar. I feel like the school, which seemed everything in their answers, $33 million. And that's just coincidental. It really is. The number of the contribution from general fund was determined by the spending I did here. I didn't anticipate taking that out until I finished the total capital expenses.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to, okay, I guess, well, we'll get to public safety again as we go through the 2% budget. Scrolling down through, we see we have with our capital improvements, which was just set up as a different fund originally when we set up our first budget. So I continue to use it. With the transfer to that, our general fund budget anticipates $925,000 surplus for 2025 on top of approximately 1.1 million we anticipate having in our general fund by the end of the year. So at the end of 2025, we'll have a $2 million surplus general fund. It's our total operating expenses are $3.2 million. It's up to you guys personally, I would love to have a year's operating expenses stashed away in a fund, and then as surplus is built up, almost all that money will be routed into new infrastructure projects, like doing Highway 6 and things like that. So just in general, that, I think it's really important that after less than 2 years of operating, you'll have that much set aside. It kind of indicates how important it was to incorporate this town, because that money was all going somewhere else. So now we'll come to it's restricted funds. Some of these are legally restricted, and some, like the capital improvements and non-routine projects funds, are restricted by you, the council. The funds that pay for this capital improvements are general fund funds. But it's nice to have an understanding of what our usual costs, $3.2 million, what are our unique costs, $452,000 here. In this capital funds, I have a big number, $45,500 for a new desk for the council here.
Would want to be able to do this?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily guys that could correct
Oh, yeah.
term for just a large, rather than tables. Something that looks good. Something that looks like the other communities.
What do you
Don't have to always look like.
No, but it's nice. When we're moving our feet, it's not necessarily being seen. So I have a IT infrastructure, software, computers, printers. Most of that expense went to our startup, to some of our short-term rental projects that basically are IT setup. Now we're talking about expanding, which is, that includes a new, I put 30,000 in the wrong line here. Under town signage, it should be under the website. You don't need 30,000 for town signage website, but the 89,000 includes several things. Records management system, a large format printer, our IT subscriptions, Adobe, things like that. And I don't have a number there, but conferencing equipment, better sound and video for these meetings will be.
Case now, is that a placeholder?
No, that's for the printer. I didn't put,
Oh, there's nothing.
yeah, I must have cut off the conference equipment, but that's the remainder of that. So that's $70,000 I have there for new conference. That's just based on what some of the other organizations have.
Just a point of information, for some reason, our food showed up very early, it's been up in about an hour and a half. I would suggest that since we have quite a bit left on our agenda, I think that we will list the rest of the budget.
If we finish the budget and then you can move on to the other plans, because we're not.
Question.
Let's finish the budget.
Okay, so I have the, like I said, the 30,000 for new website, which agenda manager, should be one line, but okay, it was just a typo. And then we have our plans that we're going to be doing over, I have the engineering assessment for town maintained roads here. I've over engineered this budget. Yes. But at the police vehicles, we moved to the 2% lodging tax fund. Overhead vehicles. And the others for a town vehicle for ourselves. We public works, simple pothole repairs, community development going out to doing inspections. Right now, we have an e-bike.
Yeah. That's right.
It's great in the summer, it doesn't work so well in the winter. So, that is an addition to this budget that you haven't seen before. And that I anticipate a pickup, and I want to get a file put on the front of it, not that we're going to call those, but there might become an issue where the file person we contracted with COVID and didn't show up, and we need to get out there and make sure things get done. So, that's what that vehicle and equipment budget is. We'll keep scrolling down, the workforce housing fund. In that, I have 600,000 for land purchase for here. That number, we might have to amend, supplement. We want that number to be we would like the land purchase to be as high as possible for the purchase of this property, including the building. Because there are
The
other.
line item to be as high as possible.
Yes. Yeah, but the line item to be as much of the purchase price as we can make that. So,
We specifically have to invest in producer.
yes. So
They just buy and say, no,
it would have to be the land, and that's why we have it.
so, well, that's what.
So I anticipate that the purchase would be a complex situation where we set the purchase price based on approval of the board rezoning the land, subdivide the land from this building and parking lot. And that's why $150,000.
That's the assumption, although we haven't really ever talked. That's an assumption.
Yeah, okay, yeah, and that's why there's 150,000 of housing fees for conceptual plans for the 6 acres on this property. Conservation Trust Fund will just follow up until we're ready to spend it on, it's very limited what we can spend it. We could transfer some things right now, it's better to have a very concrete place where we're transferring.
John, before we talk about this fund, I feel like you talked about it. Above restricted funds for, there's a line item, Tabor restricted funds. Do we need to be tracking that?
Yes, that is,
So that's trying to even. Not.
and we still have to maintain under Tabor this is not for refunds, you're required to maintain a certain fund percentage of your fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
3% of
Yeah.
your.
Yeah. So that's, even though, like I said, we have a $2 million fund balance, we can only spend 1.9, we have to keep that 98.
Good, thank you.
Okay, down to 2% lodging tax. And, so under this, anticipating 1.6 million and probably about 32,000 in interest off that over the course of the year, because the money will come in, a lot of it right at the beginning of the year, and then a lot of it at the end. But given our current rate of returns, that's where that interest number came from. I moved capital equipment for police at 250,000. That's a couple cars, the jackets and such. Miscellaneous public safety expenses, relatively small number, 15,000. Then road construction repaving, trail construction repaving. Our big, this is milling, this is rebuilding Ranch Road corner, which that's going to be our largest road repair this year coming up. That is simply not a matter of milling and laying 2 inches down. It's a matter of digging down to the road base and rebuilding the road base, road construction all the way up from there. Engineering design services for, I put a large amount in there. I'll talk about Razor Drive later during the regular meeting, but we've been working with CDOT and we have some solutions. They're probably not final solutions, but some real good safety improvements that we can make to Razor Drive. CDOT has funds that are outside of their typical TPR designation that it's set. Almost surely going to get for this, because they're planning for running there, it'll be a narrowing of the drive lanes from Razor Drive to the end of the road from 12 feet to 11 feet. Expansion of the medians in the area so that there's safety, not pedestrians crossing. More of the flashing signage that will be road mounted, not just above the road. And, remarking the lanes.
When you say there should be CDOT money, that would be seems to get that responsibility. Can I see that correctly not go after and that we have to come up with matching funds?
Actually, it's this.
Which part is? Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we can, you know, redoing, well, this 250,000 will get redesigned that, which we can start right away. It said we can spend our matching funds before the grant is awarded in this project, so we don't have to wait. And then I think it's very important that we have road repair plans we'll have to do, and it would be nice to start at least get conceptual plans for Highway 6. So that's why I have that line.
Are, as part of that, flashing light solution, also additional stuff up higher, as opposed to the level?
Mostly,
Right, that's it. I was going to ask about the lighting up high, some of those have gotten so high and so bright, they're actually shining back a couple blocks in the neighborhood.
okay, we'll look at that, we see if we just have to, definitely more focused on where it needs to be focused. And we want that, actually, we want people when they're pulling up there at night to realize this is a special section right here. So that's the budget. I do have the 200,000 for police services here that I removed from the initial budget that I presented you in September or whenever I presented and moved out here. As you saw, we have plenty of funds, general fund for that if council would like that move back up.
Given the extensive discussion we had earlier about that 2% tax funds for, and the whole program that, I would propose that we move these services back to the temple. Is there anyone in contact, Hartwell, or contact?
I think we need to know a little bit more about what we're gonna do before we start moving the budget around. And we did, this was one of the things in, that was discussed and written down, so I'm fine.
Why did you just have it consolidated?
To make the point that that lodging tax money is going to be for infrastructure and capital fund types improvement in safety, as opposed to 13 contract or joint 13. There is a difference. There's the police vehicles that John talked about. There is putting in lights above and beyond the CDOT. There's a lot of capital investments that go under public safety. They're not necessarily infrastructure. But they're also not routine policing. I just want to say $1.2 million for 200 feet. So, yeah. We're going to want to and spend as much of that money as possible. Big stuff.
Is there anything that's in the general fund that can be used for capital infrastructure improvement? So it really doesn't matter. Other than perceived optics. All right, of where we put that to, the rationale that John mentioned for keeping it where it is the existing level of service that we're providing today. That 200,000 for the increased level of support that we'll have beyond what we have today. So it's not just the cheap level that we have today, which is funded by roughly $700,000 or $800,000. This is the increased level to provide the level to provide regular patrols that we would be getting if we had an agreement.
If you could have a breakdown of services or whatever, it's, when we decide to make, then that makes sense.
You're not going to have, that's not, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get that in the budget.
Should be able to now, when we make that decision. Or, yeah,
We'll have that discussion.
so in essence, you're making an argument that keeping the police services on the back is the room to maneuver, but you also made the point that keeping it under channel funds.
Yeah. What we promised with the corporation was exactly what we're getting right now from the sheriff's department. With increased level of support, which would be regular patrols in the town, is what we would be getting in the town of Dillon, and increased law enforcement. That's what we would get.
As I said, I put that line item in there as really as a political issue because I do believe public safety was called out in the ballot question. And I think most people picture public safety as police departments. I mean, that's the sections in under our budget too. To me, and it's, you guys make the political decisions, not me, but I put it in there as a political exercise for you to discuss.
Back, I challenged the town manager when I saw it in that first too, for the same reason. So, I guess the question is, from council perspective, do you want to leave it where it is? You've heard both sides, or do you want to move all of the policing support, not the capital support?
Well, I actually think that the police services should stay. My logic for that is that I believe that this was a thing of buying with 2%. I mean, we should see the service in the 2%. That's, and not cut off, to the, so I think for the same reason, same logic, and set an expectation, I believe the expectation should.
The other thing is that I'm the one that proposed at a council meeting that we add public safety to this 2% logic purpose. I was not thinking of routine as controlling. So does that mean that I'm wrong? Does that mean everybody else is wrong? It just means this is a little bit switched. So if we are going to clarify that we're using 2% lodging tax money, lodging tax fund money for policing services, we should be able to say this. We're getting the
In verbiage in your budget report, could you cover that in service which includes, this includes the additional service that we are expecting to receive with regular patrols and regular traffic enforcement. Yeah.
I absolutely can. And I do want to make it clear. I'm indifferent. I can make this budget work wherever it is. It's a political decision made by the council.
perception communication, whatever we call it, it is. And you do not want to be, so if you can include that in this. Is that, it will help you see that.
Wait,
But thank you for the piece of all.
And for clarity, that budget report, are we gonna be seeing that budget report before we approve the budget?
It will come with the finalized budget and the resolutions.
So we're going to see the budget report, so we'd be able to address things like, as Councilmember Curry mentioned. This one, would also be able to address things like the funding for the charitable contributions. Same with that.
Correct.
So we're not just gonna be approving a spreadsheet, we're actually gonna be approving the budget report, which includes the background.
Correct.
All right, is there anything else in the town manager budget?
Not that I need.
Then, unless there's an objection, I would like to recess for 15 minutes while we gather food, and then we'll come back and continue on with the discussion of the nuisance ordinance.
Yeah, and if I, just for information, there's no way we're going to finish the nuisance discussion in this workshop tonight.
Well, if you'd like to postpone,
We can postpone the entire thing. I have no problem.
what are your thoughts?